Your wedding was stressful? At least nobody shaved your head, beat your feet with a dried fish, or handed you garbage soup in a toilet bowl. For thousands of years, cultures across the globe turned what should be the happiest day of your life into something absolutely unhinged. These are 32 wedding traditions that prove humanity has never had any idea how to handle marriage. 1. Spartan men were basically raised as professional warriors from the age of 7, living in all-male military barracks with zero female contact for most of their lives. So naturally, when wedding night rolled around, these guys had no clue how to behave around a woman. The creative workaround? Disguise the bride as a dude. Spartan brides had their heads shaved completely bald and were dressed in men's clothes and sandals. This was meant to help the groom psychologically transition from his all-male existence to married life, which is quite the understatement. The bride would then sit alone in a pitch-dark room while her new husband snuck out of the barracks, handled business as fast as possible, and then sprinted back before anyone noticed his absence. This secret routine continued for years. Some Spartan husbands reportedly never saw their wives in daylight until they already had kids. Clearly, romance ranked somewhere below sword polishing on the Spartan priority list. 2. The Teddong people of Borneo created what might be the single most physically brutal wedding tradition in human existence. After the ceremony, newlyweds are completely banned from using the bathroom for 3 entire days and 3 entire nights. No urinating, no bowel movements. Nothing. Family members take shifts watching the couple around the clock to ensure nobody sneaks off to cheat. The bride and groom receive barely any food or water during this period, just enough to keep them alive without producing too much, well, evidence. The reasoning behind this biological nightmare? Breaking the rule means the marriage is cursed with infidelity, terrible fortune, or even the death of future children. So the stakes are genuinely terrifying. Picture starting your honeymoon, not daydreaming about romance, but mentally calculating the structural limits of your own bladder. Any modern doctor would call this a health hazard. The Teddong consider it a gesture of devotion. 3. Among the Tuja people of China, a bride is expected to become an elite-level crier well before her wedding day. Starting a full month before the ceremony, she is required to cry for 1 solid hour every single day. This is not about genuine sadness, and it is definitely not optional. It is a formalized ritual known as zuotang, where the weeping follows specific rhythms, melodies, and lyrics. 10 days into this daily sob session, her mother joins in. 10 days after that, her grandmother hops on board too. By the time the wedding arrives, the entire female side of the family is crying in unison, performing what basically sounds like an emotional choir recital. The songs themselves express love for the parents and grief about leaving the family home. Brides who cry beautifully earn genuine admiration for their emotional depth and devotion. Brides who struggle to produce tears, they get judged as poorly raised. This tradition takes the crying at weddings stereotype and turns it into a full month of mandatory emotional athletics. 4. French culture has contributed champagne toasts and dreamy honeymoon destinations to the wedding world. But it also created la soupe, a tradition so revolting it makes every other wedding custom look downright elegant. Once the newlyweds disappeared into their bedroom, guests would scavenge through whatever remained from the reception. Half-chewed meat scraps, soggy bread crusts, leftover wine dregs, random sauce puddles, anything the table had to offer. All of this was blended into one unholy mixture and presented to the couple inside a chamber pot. For those unfamiliar, a chamber pot is what people used as a portable toilet before modern plumbing was a thing. The bride and groom were expected to drink this nightmarish concoction before getting on with their wedding night, all in the name of fertility and good fortune. Today's version uses chocolate and champagne in a clean bowl, which is marginally less traumatizing. But for centuries, French couples launched their marriage by gulping garbage stew from a fake toilet while their loved ones cheered. 5. White wedding dresses feel like a tradition as old as marriage itself. In reality, they are a surprisingly recent invention. For most of recorded history, wearing white to your wedding would have been considered genuinely bizarre. Many cultures associated white with death and mourning, not celebration. Brides simply wore the nicest outfit they already owned, whatever the color. Red was a favorite across many Asian cultures because it represented passion and fertility. Blue dominated much of Europe because it symbolized purity long before white ever did. Then, in 1840, Queen Victoria showed up to marry Prince Albert wearing a white gown. As arguably the most famous woman on the planet at the time, her fashion decision triggered an instant copycat frenzy among wealthy elites. White fabric was expensive and nearly impossible to keep clean, which made it a perfect status symbol. From there, the trend spread worldwide through colonialism and the growing reach of media. The tradition that now feels timeless and sacred is actually younger than the bicycle. 6. The ancient Celts had an impressively sensible take on marriage with a practice called handfasting. Rather than pledging eternal devotion on day one, couples entered a probationary marriage lasting exactly 1 year and 1 day. During the ceremony, their hands were physically tied together with a cord, and yes, that is literally where the expression tying the knot comes from. For that entire trial period, the couple lived as full husband and wife, sharing a home, daily responsibilities, and a bed. Once the year was up, they faced a simple decision. Either make the marriage permanent or walk away cleanly with no legal battles and no social stigma. Any children born during the trial were considered legitimate no matter what the couple decided. The whole arrangement was basically a marriage subscription with a generous free trial and a painless cancellation policy. Honestly, looking at modern divorce statistics, maybe the Celts figured something out that the rest of us are still struggling with. 7. In Mauritania, a deeply disturbing tradition has survived across generations. Young girls are sent to so-called fattening farms, where they are force-fed up to 16,000 calories a day. The objective is to make them as physically large as possible before marriage, because within this culture, extreme weight gain and stretch marks are viewed as markers of beauty, prosperity, and childbearing potential. Girls as young as 5 are put through this process, consuming enormous amounts of camel milk, couscous, and fatty foods against their will. Those who refuse to eat or throw up are punished. The practice, called le bleu, has been gradually declining thanks to education campaigns and growing health awareness, but it persists in rural communities. While beauty standards vary across the globe, this tradition causes devastating health consequences, including heart disease, diabetes, and lasting psychological damage. It is a sharp and uncomfortable reminder that not all wedding customs are harmless cultural quirks. Some cause real suffering, dressed up in the language of love and tradition. 8. Brides in ancient Rome went through a hairstyling process that sounds more like a weapons demonstration than wedding prep. On the morning of the ceremony, the bride's hair was divided into 6 precise sections using a specialized iron spear known as the hasta calabaris. And here is the critical detail. This could not be just any random spear. The weapon was required to have previously killed someone, ideally a gladiator or an enemy of Rome. The blood-soaked tip was believed to repel evil spirits that might try to sabotage the new marriage. Some scholars believe this ritual linked the bride to Mars, the Roman god of war, whose fierce protection over the new household was highly valued. Others interpret it as symbolizing the death of the bride's old identity as she became a matron. Whatever the logic, Roman brides had to sit perfectly still while someone waved a murder weapon inches from their scalp. Bridal beauty routines were apparently a lot more high stakes before professional hairstylists became a thing. 9. Medieval Europe produced plenty of questionable ideas, but the bedding ceremony might be the all-time champion of awkwardness. After the wedding feast wrapped up, guests did not simply wave goodnight to the newlyweds. They physically marched the couple to the bedroom. And by marched, I mean they undressed them, tucked them into bed, and then proceeded to just stand there to make sure the marriage was officially consummated. Priests sometimes showed up to deliver a blessing over the bed. Other times, the entire wedding party would linger nearby, cracking jokes and shouting helpful tips through the door. For royal weddings, official witnesses were legally required to verify that the act took place, because producing heirs was a matter of state policy. Personal privacy on your wedding night simply did not exist as a concept. The tradition eventually faded into history, mercifully, But for hundreds of years, your first night as a married couple came complete with a live studio audience. Nothing screams romance quite like your uncle standing in the corner giving you an encouraging thumbs up. 10. In South Korea, the groom's ordeal kicks off the moment the ceremony ends. His friends and relatives grab his ankles, tie them together with rope, yank off his shoes and socks, and then start whacking the bare soles of his feet with either a dried corvina fish or a wooden stick. This tradition, known as falaka, is supposed to be a test of strength and character before the wedding night begins. Between each round of smacks, the tormentors throw out trivia questions and riddles for the groom to answer. Get one wrong? Extra beating. The whole spectacle is technically meant to be lighthearted, and everyone involved generally ends up laughing about it, but getting the bottoms of your feet repeatedly slapped with a dehydrated fish is nobody's idea of a relaxing afternoon. The groom has to power through the pain while also proving he can take a joke. It is essentially a fraternity hazing ritual wearing a wedding tradition disguise. On the upside, at least the fish doubles as catering afterward. 11. In Kyrgyzstan, a practice known as alakachu, which translates to grab and run, has existed along a spectrum from choreographed ritual to outright criminal act. In its more traditional version, a man who wanted a particular bride would organize a group of friends to physically seize her and bring her to his family's home, where female relatives would then pressure and plead with the crying, often resisting woman to agree to the marriage. In some instances, this was essentially staged, with both families having quietly arranged the match in advance. But in far too many cases, women were genuinely abducted and forced into marriages they never wanted and never consented to. While the practice is now officially illegal in Kyrgyzstan and law enforcement has stepped up prosecutions, it still happens, especially in rural communities. This is one of those traditions that starkly illustrates how cultural customs can be used to disguise genuine harm, and why some practices deserve extinction rather than preservation. 12. In France, a tradition known as shivaree functioned as the community's unofficial punishment system for couples who broke unwritten social rules. If a marriage struck the locals as inappropriate, say an elderly man wedding a much younger woman, a widow remarrying suspiciously fast, or a wife rumored to be running the household, the neighborhood would assemble outside their home after dark. Armed with pots, pans, drums, and sheer determination, the mob would bang on everything, scream insults, belt out mocking songs, and generate an absolutely unbearable wall of noise that could go on for hours, or sometimes multiple nights in a row. The entire performance was designed to publicly shame the couple and broadcast collective disapproval. The racket only stopped when the couple either handed over cash or agreed to throw a party for their tormentors. This tradition existed throughout Europe under different names and persisted well into the 1800s. Think of it as the original cancel culture, just powered by kitchen equipment and sheer pettiness instead of social media hashtags. 13. Among the Maasai people of Kenya, a father's farewell to his daughter on her wedding day involves a gesture that would horrify guests at a Western ceremony. He spits on her, right on her head and her chest, just before she walks out of her childhood home for the last time. In Maasai culture, though, this is the furthest thing from an insult. Spitting is genuinely considered a powerful blessing. The father intentionally avoids heaping verbal praise on his daughter because spoken compliments are believed to attract jealousy and malicious spirits. So instead of a tearful speech about how proud he is, he delivers his love and protection through saliva. The bride receives this spit with real gratitude, fully understanding that her father cares enough to shield her from dark forces. It is a completely different emotional framework from Western weddings, where fathers typically deliver weepy monologues about how amazing their daughters are. The love is identical. The delivery method could not be more different. 14. In India, astrology carries enormous weight when it comes to marriage planning. If a woman is born under a specific alignment of Mars in her birth chart, she is classified as having Mangal dosha, a cosmic curse believed to bring sickness, misfortune, or even death to any man she marries. The remedy for this? She has to marry a tree first. Specifically, either a banana tree or a peepal tree, also called a sacred fig. A complete wedding ceremony is carried out with all the proper rituals and prayers, formally binding the woman to this plant in legitimate matrimony. Afterward, to neutralize the curse and clear the path for an actual human marriage, the tree is chopped down or destroyed. The astrological bad luck supposedly transfers to the tree, which conveniently has no ability to file complaints about dying for someone else's romantic future. Celebrities have gone through this. Regular families do it all the time. Somewhere at this very moment, a tree is being decorated as a groom, with absolutely no idea it is about to be sacrificed on the altar of someone's horoscope. 15. Prima Noctta, sometimes called droit du seigneur, is the legendary right of a medieval lord to sleep with any peasant bride on her wedding night before the groom could touch her. This concept has been featured in countless films, novels, and television shows, with the most iconic appearance being in Braveheart. Here is the twist, though. Historians have found essentially zero credible evidence that this ever functioned as an actual codified legal right anywhere in medieval Europe. The earliest written mentions of it come from authors condemning the practice as barbaric, but they were always pointing at foreign or ancient civilizations, never their own. The whole thing appears to be largely mythological, possibly invented to make earlier generations look more savage, or to generate support for political reform. Individual lords certainly abused their power in all kinds of ways, but an officially sanctioned right to deflower brides on their wedding night? Almost certainly fiction. It remains one of history's most stubbornly persistent legends about the medieval world that most likely never actually happened. 16. Swedish wedding receptions include a tradition that would spark an immediate crisis at most other weddings on Earth. Whenever the groom steps out of the reception hall to use the restroom, every single male guest has the green light to kiss the bride. And when the bride leaves for the bathroom, every woman at the party gets to kiss the groom. This custom, known simply as wedding kissing, is treated as harmless fun by everyone involved. The kisses are supposed to be innocent, quick pecks rather than anything remotely passionate, and the whole thing plays out as a light-hearted party game. The practical result is that neither the bride nor the groom wants to leave the room for even a second, knowing exactly what is happening behind their back. Some couples genuinely enjoy the chaos. Others develop near superhuman bladder endurance for the entire duration of the reception. Either way, it definitely keeps the energy high and guarantees every guest walks away with a memorable story. 17. In Fiji, a man who wants to marry a woman must first present her father with a tabua, which is a polished tooth from a sperm whale. There is no workaround and no alternative gift. Without that whale tooth, the wedding simply does not happen. The tabua ranks among the most sacred objects in all of Fijian culture, reserved exclusively for the most significant ceremonies, formal apologies, and high-stakes negotiations. Historically, getting your hands on one meant either hunting a whale yourself, which was staggeringly dangerous, or trading for one which was staggeringly expensive. The tooth represents the groom's seriousness, social standing, and capacity to provide for his future family. Even in modern Fiji, authentic tabua are carefully guarded family heirlooms passed down across generations. Some families possess whale teeth that are hundreds of years old. Contemporary weddings still require this tradition, though the teeth now come through inheritance rather than actual ocean expeditions. It is quite possibly the highest pressure father-in-law gift exchange in all of human history. 18. In the Republic of Congo, there is a wedding rule that would break most people within minutes. The bride and groom are strictly forbidden from smiling throughout the entire wedding ceremony and the entire reception. Not during the vows, not during the photographs, not while dancing, eating cake, or listening to toasts from their closest friends and family. The whole event must unfold with completely stone-faced expressions from start to finish. The reasoning behind this? Marriage is viewed as an extraordinarily serious commitment, and any smiling would signal that the couple is not treating their vows with the gravity they deserve. A bride or groom caught letting a grin slip through risks being judged as immature or careless by their families and the entire community. Now picture trying to keep a straight face while everyone you love is celebrating around you, while you are dressed in the finest outfit you have ever worn, while you are marrying the person you chose to spend your whole life with. Pulling this off requires Olympic-caliber emotional self-control. 19. Across several different cultures around the globe, newlywed couples share their very first meal together in total silence and complete isolation. No guests hovering nearby, no family members checking in, no conversation between the two of them. Just the couple, sitting together, eating quietly in a room with the door shut. The specific explanations for this practice shift depending on the culture. Some hold that silence gives the couple space to genuinely absorb the weight of what they have just committed to. Others believe that speaking during this sacred meal could summon bad luck or invite evil spirits into the marriage. Certain traditions maintain that the first words a married couple speaks to each other carry enormous power, so the couple deliberately stays quiet until the meal is finished and the right words can be chosen carefully. The isolation itself reinforces the idea that marriage creates an entirely new, independent family unit. Whatever the philosophy behind it, this ritual stands in dramatic contrast to the typical wedding reception, packed with noise, speeches, and non-stop socializing. Sometimes the most meaningful moments happen without a single word being spoken. 20. Between the 1600s and the 1800s, getting a divorce in England was practically impossible unless you were wealthy enough to navigate the absurdly expensive legal system. So ordinary working-class people invented their own unofficial alternative, wife selling. A husband looking to end his marriage would lead his wife to a public marketplace, place a rope or halter around her neck as if she were livestock, and auction her off to whoever bid the highest. This sounds absolutely nightmarish, and in many cases it genuinely was. But historians have discovered that a significant number of these sales were completely prearranged. The wife, the buyer, who was usually already her lover, and the husband had all quietly agreed on the terms ahead of time. The public spectacle of the auction was simply a way to make the separation appear legitimate in the eyes of the community. It was still degrading and had absolutely no legal standing, but for couples with zero access to proper divorce, it offered a crude way out. The last documented wife sale in England took place in 1913. That is disturbingly close to living memory. 21. German weddings feature a pre-ceremony tradition called Polterabend that would make any professional cleaner weep on sight. The evening before the wedding, guests gather outside the couple's home loaded with porcelain, ceramic dishes, and pottery. Then they obliterate everything. Plates, cups, tiles, old toilets, literally any breakable material except glass, gets launched at the ground and smashed into a million fragments. The resulting catastrophe blankets the entire area in front of the house with a thick layer of shattered debris. Now here's the crucial detail. The bride and groom are required to clean up every last piece together. No outside help permitted. The explosive noise of dishes shattering is believed to frighten away evil spirits, while the shared cleanup symbolizes how the couple will tackle life's chaos as a team. Some Polterabend celebrations escalate to the point where entire truckloads of dishes are hauled in just to be destroyed. Neighbors learn to expect the commotion. The tradition is still wildly popular in Germany today, though the couple's lower backs probably file a formal complaint by the next morning. 22. German weddings also include a hands-on teamwork challenge called Baumstammsägen, which literally translates to sawing the log. Right after the ceremony wraps up, often while the bride and groom are still wearing their formal wedding attire, a thick wooden log is placed in front of them along with a two-person crosscut saw. Together, they must saw completely through the log while their guests stand around watching and shouting encouragement. The exercise demands genuine coordination, clear communication, and a healthy dose of patience. If one person pushes too aggressively or pulls at the wrong moment, the saw jams and goes nowhere. The couple has to find their rhythm and work in sync, which symbolizes exactly how they will need to cooperate through every challenge their marriage throws at them. Some couples power through it effortlessly. Others visibly struggle, rocking the saw back and forth while the log barely budges. The tradition reliably delivers one of two outcomes for wedding guests: either a genuinely moving display of partnership or a comedy show at the couple's expense. 23. In Ireland, a groom making his way to the wedding ceremony might find his path blocked by straw boys, gangs of young men wearing elaborate costumes made entirely of straw who would barricade roads, encircle churches, and flatly refuse to let the wedding proceed until their demands were met. These were not bandits or common criminals. They were a recognized and traditional part of Irish wedding festivities. The straw boys would insist on food, drink, cash, or a guaranteed invitation to the wedding feast before letting anyone pass. Their straw disguises provided total anonymity, which gave them the confidence to be far bolder than they would ever be with their faces showing. Once they were properly satisfied, they would step aside and usually crash the party anyway, dancing with guests throughout the reception. The practice stretches back centuries and was especially common in the rural countryside. Some couples genuinely loved the theatrical chaos it added to their big day. Others probably spent the whole time wishing they had just eloped instead of negotiating their way through a straw-covered roadblock before saying their vows. 24. The modern tradition of bridesmaids catching the bouquet has a much more violent backstory than most people realize. Back in medieval Europe, wedding guests were convinced that physically touching the bride brought good fortune. Some went even further, believing that tearing off a piece of her dress multiplied the luck. This resulted in situations where brides were literally swarmed by crowds of guests grabbing and ripping at their clothing. Dresses were shredded to pieces. Brides were sometimes physically hurt in the frenzy. The whole scene would spiral into pure chaos. To protect themselves, brides started hurling objects into the crowd as diversions. Their garters, their bouquets, whatever they could grab to redirect the mob's attention. While the guests scrambled after the thrown items, the bride had a window to escape to safety. The bouquet toss that happens at weddings today is just the polished, civilized descendant of what was originally a desperate self-defense tactic against aggressively superstitious party guests. So the next time you dive for a flying bouquet, just remember that you are reenacting a centuries-old survival strategy. 25. Scotland has a pre-wedding ritual called the blackening that looks less like a celebration and more like a scene from a survival horror film. In the days leading up to the wedding, friends and family ambush the bride, the groom, or sometimes both, and proceed to coat them from head to toe in the most vile substances they can find. We are talking treacle, soot, curdled milk, rotten eggs, fish guts, mud, flour, feathers, and occasionally straight-up garbage. Once the victim is sufficiently disgusting, they get paraded through town, frequently strapped to the back of a truck or cart, while everyone honks horns, smashes pots together, and generates maximum noise. The philosophy behind this delightful tradition: if you can survive being publicly humiliated while dripping in filth, you can survive anything that married life has in store. It is basically a relationship stress test cranked up to the absolute extreme. The tradition is still going strong in rural Scotland, and some couples genuinely look forward to it. Others almost certainly reconsider their entire social circle. 26. The Yugore people of China have a wedding custom that sounds like it was cut from an action blockbuster for being too ridiculous. Before the ceremony can officially begin, the groom is required to shoot his bride with 3 arrows. Now hold on, the arrowheads are removed first so nobody is actually getting impaled. The groom draws his bow, takes careful aim at the woman he loves, and lets 3 arrows fly directly at her. After this profoundly romantic act of simulated violence, he gathers all 3 arrows and snaps them in half, then breaks the bow itself for good measure. This symbolizes that his love is eternal and that he will never cause her harm again. Which is a genuinely sweet idea, but the underlying logic is a little questionable. The most convincing way to demonstrate you will never hurt someone is to first pretend to attack them 3 separate times? That is like proving you are a safe driver by doing donuts in a crowded parking lot. Still, the tradition has endured for centuries, so clearly nobody is filing any objections. 27. English wedding lore includes a peculiar superstition that chimney sweeps are powerful good luck charms. If a bride happens to see a chimney sweep on her wedding day and receives a kiss from him, her marriage is supposedly guaranteed to be filled with happiness and wealth. This belief became so deeply embedded in English culture that chimney sweeps began actively hiring themselves out to attend weddings as professional lucky charms. They would arrive dressed in their full working gear, covered in authentic soot, specifically to plant a kiss on the bride and pocket a fee for their services. The exact origin of this superstition is murky. One popular story claims that King George II's carriage horses once bolted out of control and a chimney sweep heroically intervened, earning the entire profession a permanent royal stamp of approval. Another theory suggests that the sweep's association with soot and fire symbolizes warmth in the household. Whatever the actual reason, professional chimney sweeps in England still get booked for weddings today, strolling through receptions in their signature black coats and top hats, handing out good luck kisses to grateful brides. 28. Ancient weddings included a surprisingly tactical form of security against evil spirits and potential kidnappers: decoy brides. Bridesmaids were deliberately dressed in outfits identical to the brides, making it impossible for any supernatural force or ill-intentioned person to figure out which woman was actually getting married. If a demon wanted to curse the bride, it would have to play a guessing game first. If a rival suitor had plans to snatch her away, he faced the exact same confusion. This is actually one of the oldest and most widely accepted explanations for why bridesmaids exist in the first place. They were not there for emotional support or photo opportunities. They were human decoys, dressed identically to the target to absorb any incoming danger on her behalf. As centuries passed, the matching outfits became less precise. Bridesmaid dresses evolved into their own distinct fashion category, and the original spiritual protection purpose quietly faded from memory. But the entire tradition of having women stand beside the bride on her wedding day traces directly back to this ancient tactical defense strategy. 29. Everybody has heard of a honeymoon, but very few people know where that word actually originates. In ancient European societies, a newly married couple was supplied with enough mead, an alcoholic drink made from fermented honey, to last one full lunar cycle after their wedding. They were expected to drink this honey wine every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. And the motivation was not purely celebratory. Mead was widely believed to have aphrodisiac qualities and to significantly boost fertility. The idea was that an entire month of steady honey wine consumption would dramatically improve the odds of conceiving a child as quickly as possible. The moon reference ties into both the lunar cycle used to measure the month and the poetic notion that the sweetness of new love, much like the moon itself, would eventually begin to fade. So the original honeymoon was less about jetting off to some exotic beach resort and more about staying home, drinking heavily on a daily basis, and aggressively trying to produce offspring. The tradition transformed beyond recognition over the centuries, but the name has stubbornly survived for well over 1,000 years. 30. Weddings in Tudor era. England ended with a tradition that modern couples would probably consider assault. As the bride and groom climbed into their carriage to depart the celebration, every guest in attendance would grab old shoes and hurl them at the vehicle, or in many cases directly at the newlyweds themselves. Landing a direct hit on the couple was considered especially lucky for everyone involved. The custom may trace its roots back to even older practices, where the bride's father would hand one of her shoes to the groom as a symbol of transferring authority over his daughter. Over time, this symbolic gesture somehow evolved into full-on footwear projectiles aimed at people's bodies. The tradition eventually mellowed into the now familiar practice of tying old shoes or tin cans to the back of the wedding car, which is still common today. So the next time you spot shoes bouncing along behind a vehicle with a "Just Married" sign in the window, remember that those are the domesticated descendants of projectiles that were once launched directly at people's heads in the name of good fortune. 31. The Dor people of Inner Mongolia, in China, have an extremely specific prerequisite before any wedding date can be set. The engaged couple must perform a ritual together that would make most modern partners deeply uncomfortable. Together, they have to slaughter a chicken and then meticulously inspect its liver. If the liver appears healthy and properly formed, the wedding planning can officially move forward. If the liver looks discolored, misshapen, or otherwise abnormal in any way, the wedding is postponed immediately. The couple then has to kill another chicken and examine that liver. And if that one fails too, they kill another. And another. This cycle repeats until they finally find a liver that meets the cosmic standard of approval. Some couples reportedly go through a considerable number of chickens before the universe gives them permission to get married. It is essentially handing over control of your wedding calendar to poultry internal organs. On the bright side, by the time the couple actually reaches the altar, there is probably more than enough chicken for every single guest at the reception. Assuming they ever get there. 32. Victorian-era weddings featured bridal accessories that would deeply unsettle most people alive today. Hair jewelry was extraordinarily fashionable during this period, and we are absolutely not talking about sparkly hairpins or decorative combs. We are talking about jewelry physically crafted from real human hair. Brides would receive intricate wreaths, bracelets, brooches, and necklaces woven entirely from hair collected from their family members as meaningful wedding presents. The hair was carefully gathered, thoroughly cleaned, and then skillfully braided into elaborate and sometimes beautiful patterns by skilled artisans. These pieces were cherished as deeply personal keepsakes, intended to keep beloved family members symbolically close even beyond death. Hair art was actually a respected profession during the Victorian era, with dedicated specialists who created remarkably detailed designs. Queen Victoria herself regularly wore hair jewelry after Prince Albert passed away. While this strikes modern sensibilities as profoundly unsettling, for Victorians, it was a genuinely touching method of carrying family bonds wherever life took you. The boundary between sentimental and deeply creepy is apparently razor thin, and shifts dramatically depending on which century you happen to be living in. Now, I already know what is happening in the comments right now. Somebody is furious because their country's weirdest wedding tradition did not make this list. And honestly, there is no way we got them all. So prove me wrong. What is the most insane, bizarre, or straight-up cursed wedding tradition from your culture that we completely left out? Because I guarantee some of you have personally witnessed things that would make Spartan head shaving look boring. Hit that like button if your brain needs a minute to recover, and subscribe because the next video is going to be even worse.